There's a wide variety of ways to pare leather, and there's a corresponding wide variety of knives to do it with. I'm going to focus on the English style paring knife. The one I'm holding there is a French style. This is another English style but wider. The English style knife comes in a left and right-handed version. So this is a left-handed version, and that's the one I'm going to demonstrate sharpening. I bought this knife from Hewitt's. It cost, I think it was £6, so it's quite cheap. The first thing to do is to get the grease off of it. It's covered in grease to stop it rusting. Now, what's the difference between this knife and much more expensive knives? Mainly that the steel is a bit softer than other knives. However, it's still I think it's a really good knife, and the advantage of the slightly softer steel is that it's easier to tune up and sharpen. Now, I normally use diamond stones for sharpening. I've had these for 15 years. They're amazing stones, however, they're expensive. This pair cost me, or would cost you, $500 Australian. Now, not everyone wants to make that investment, which I understand. So instead, I'm going to demonstrate sharpening on a $40 marble pastry board and using sheets of emery cloth. The emery cloth cost me, I think it was $1.50 at the hardware store. So I'm going to use 3 grits. I'm going to use, the finest will be 1200, then 800, and the coarsest, which I'm showing here, is, I think it's 240. I'll use some spray-on adhesive to keep it in place on the marble. Now, the marble is my portable paring surface, so I don't want to wreck the surface. A little bit of acetone gets rid of the adhesive quite nicely. Now, this is a left-handed knife, and I've never sharpened a left-handed knife before, so there's a few times you'll see me a bit confused because it's just not what I expected. But it's pretty much the same as a right-handed knife. The first thing to do is to flatten the back. Now, my initial impression of this knife is that it's reasonably flat. I've got the flat area up to the edge for about 1/3 of the length of the blade. So I'm thinking this isn't going to be too bad. By cleaning the emery cloth off with a stiff brush, you can extend the life of the cloth and get a bit more sharpening out of it. Now, all's going pretty good. I've put about 10 minutes into it now, and I've got that flat area up along most of the blade. Now, it turned out that one edge dropped off quite a bit, and I ended up spending about 45 minutes and used 3 sheets of emery paper to get the back flat. There's 2 main ways to know that you've got it flat right up to the edge. One is to feel for a burr that extends all the length of the blade, and the other is to use a magnifying glass, and you'll usually be able to see that burr and be able to just see that the scratches extend right up to the edge of the blade. Now the back is flat, it's time to work on the bevel. Now this blade is slightly hollow ground, and I've decided that I want to do the bevel as low as possible. So what I'm doing is I'm rocking it up onto the flat, so it's going to touch at the tip of the blade and at the back of the bevel, and I'll probably grind out the hollow because it's very shallow. So I'll try and be a bit clearer. Once I find the angle that I want, I try and hold it at that angle and grind it to that angle. For paring leather, you want the bevel angle quite low, as low as 12 to 15 degrees. Compare that to a woodworking chisel, which can be 25 or 30 degrees. For paring knives, I usually don't use a secondary bevel. I want the bevel angle as low as possible. It makes a big difference for cutting soft material like leather. And I want the knife to cut leather as well as possible for paring. You'll notice that I'm always checking that I'm sharpening on that bevel plane. So I'll rock it back and forth until I feel it sitting on that plane, and then I'll start sharpening. I'll try and keep my forearms as parallel to the bench as possible, and I'll use my upper arms to move the knife back and forth. Actually, the description keeping my arms parallel is probably not correct. I'm just trying to keep my arms at the same angle. I'm just trying to keep that knife at the same angle. I don't want it to rock back and forth and produce a rounded surface. Now, the same as the back, I'm using sight and feel to determine that I've got the bevel completely flat. So I'm feeling for the burr extending the full length of the blade, and I'm looking for scratches that cross the whole bevel. Somewhere about now, I'm going to round off the very sharp tip of the knife. I'll do that by just lifting up the hand a little bit, just rocking it a little bit, and just sharpening the tip. If you don't take the very sharp point off the tip, then it's likely to break off later and leave a jagged end, or it could also scratch your paring surface. So just round the tip off a little bit. I just want to mention something about the logistics of my videos. I've really enjoyed putting the music in the background of my videos, but the feedback's been that it's very distracting. Now, since my goal is to help people learn bookbinding, it's no point having something that's distracting people. I did try doing a no music version and a music version of the videos, but that's not working out either. So it's a bit of extra work for me, and YouTube, the system just doesn't like it. So I am going to go back to just not having music. If there's long stretches where not much is happening while I'm sewing, for instance, I might sneak a little bit of music in, but I won't have any music going while I'm talking from now on. For a while, I'll continue to append no music to the title of my videos, but once everyone's figured out that there's only one version of the videos, then I'll start to drop that as well. It took me about 30 minutes to get the bevel flat. Now, once the back is flat and the bevel is flat and at the angle that you want, it's time to move on to the next grit, 800 grit in this case. Now the grit progression is much faster. Once you've got the surfaces flat, it's just a matter of taking out the scratches from the coarser material. So again, you feel for the burr and watch the scratch patterns until you've removed the coarser scratches from the coarser paper. Now it's onto the 1200 grit. So it probably took me less than 10 minutes to go through the 800 and 1200 grit papers. And it was a lot less work than the initial flattening. The final step is to strop on this homemade strop. I'm going to charge it with Veritas honing compound, which is a blend of chromium and aluminium oxide and leaves an average half micron scratch pattern, which is close to a mirror finish. So the strop is just a piece of wood that I've put a piece of calf flesh side up on one side and grain side up on the other. It's the flesh side that I've charged with the honing compound. Took a moment to realise I need to just swap sides because of the left-handed knife. Once I got that sorted out, it's just a matter of doing about 30 strokes on the back, and then going over to the bevel, setting the angle just like before, and doing about 30 strokes. Go back to the back, and that will remove any burr. Just swap back and forth a few times, doing a few strokes each side. And finally finish off on the grain side leather without any honing compound on it. So take it pretty close to a mirror finish. If I want a mirror finish, I'd usually use one of my very fine ceramic water stones, but again, they're expensive and not everyone's going to want to invest in those. So I've never sharpened a left-handed knife, and I've never used one either. So here it goes. First try. Well, it's not a perfect edge pair, but the knife's certainly sharp enough. I don't know, this working left-handed seems to be both harder and easier than I expected. The edge of the handles of these knives can be quite sharp, so to make them more comfortable to use, it's nice to wrap something around them. I'm just going to wrap a bit of kangaroo leather around this. So I've just got a scrap piece of leather here. I'll measure it to the right size to wrap around, and I'll use a bit of contact adhesive to glue it onto the knife. The handle's wedge shaped, so just to make the leather a bit wedge shaped as well, I'm just doing it by eye. I use a scrap piece of paper to measure the distance around the knife. I'll add about 8 millimeters for the overlap. Arthur Johnson has the great line in his book, "One of the most admired skills in bookbinding is the paring of leather, yet only sharp tools and confidence are required." There is so much variation in paring technique that I'm uncomfortable even giving an overview. I use a very limited technique. I tip pare with an English knife, and that's why I'm showing you how to sharpen an English style knife. I also use a French style knife to make adjustments, especially near but slightly away from the edge. In future videos, I will show you my approach to paring. But in the meantime, in the description of this video, I'll put a link to what I think are the 4 best videos on YouTube which demonstrate paring for bookbinding. I'll also include a link to an article by Jeff Peachey on using the English style paring knife. I think it's by far and away the best article on the subject and certainly worth having a look at. These contact adhesives have nasty fumes, so make sure you open the doors and windows when you're using them. The next 2 full projects that I'm thinking of doing are both half leather bindings, and I think they're only going to require edge paring. So a knife is the only leather tool that you'll need. So that's why I've done this video, to get ready for those projects. But if you're going to do leather binding, you will need to be able to pare leather away from the edge, such as along joints. For that, I use a Stanley 151 spoke shave. So my next video will be on how to improve or get a Stanley 151 ready for paring leather. If you'd like to be notified about my future projects, please hit the subscribe button. And now we should get back to finishing off this project. Now that you've got the knife razor sharp, you need to protect that edge and also yourself. So make a cover for the knife. I've used a scrap bit of leather, but you can also make something out of grey board. If you found this video useful and would like me to do more projects involving leather, please hit the like button, and thanks for watching.